Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing the screen replacement on this Motorola G5G. The screen is pretty badly damaged. Unfortunately, the screen's not giving us any kind of image, so I can't show you exactly how bad it is. But in today's video, we're going to be taking you step by step to replacing the screen on this model. To begin with, you're going to want to preheat the back. So off to the side here, I have a heating mat. So I'm just gonna set that aside real quick. All right, now once it's warm enough, it doesn't have to be too hot, just a little bit warm enough so that way the adhesive does loosen up a bit around the edges. We're gonna go ahead and take our pry tool and we're gonna go around the entirety of the edge of the phone, not going too deep into it, just along the edge to undo all that adhesive that's along it. So we're just gonna find a corner to begin with. Now that we got it in, notice how I'm not putting in the tool all the way. That's just to avoid it potentially damaging any connections that are running along the edge. And it avoids us having to potentially puncture the battery, which is inside. All right, I'm just gonna stop right there at that point, and I'm gonna go ahead and continue along the bottom here. All right. And since most of the adhesive is already pretty loose, we're going to just make sure that there is no cable running underneath this portion. And we can pry up on it just with our hand. The adhesive on this portion can be a bit finicky, so you can go ahead and reheat it if you choose to. Or to make things a little bit more easier, what we can do is we can go ahead and grab a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and add it to the very tip of our pry tool. And that should also help soften up most of the adhesive inside. All right, there we go. So once we have our back separated from our phone, we now have access to the internal. So we're going to go ahead and start by removing any of the excess adhesive that we have along the sides. And then afterwards, we are going to remove all the screws that are on our top portion of the phone and the back portion. All right, so your next step is going to be to remove these screws from both the top and the bottom. They are all Phillips head screws. Generally, the rule of thumb here is that you want to make sure that you are organizing your screws because they can come in different sizes. So the way that I'm going to separate them today is going to be the top portion from the bottom portion, just so I don't get confused as to which screw goes where. I'm going to be organizing them separately in these two little components up top. All right, so now that we have all of our screws removed from the back, the next step would be to remove the SIM tray for this phone. And as we can see, it's located right here on the side. So in this little hole right there, you are gonna wanna get something small enough that would fit in there. So that way it ejects the SIM tray and you're able to remove that along with your SIM card. So that way we can remove this back portion of the phone right here. Now for that, you normally wanna use something as standard as a SIM key. This goes right into this hole right here, and as soon as you insert it, you'll see that it ejects it. Just grab that little edge right there with your nail, pull it out, and then you can remove your SIM tray, set that aside someplace safe, and then we're going to continue with removing this back portion of the phone. In doing that, we're also going to need our pry tool again, and all you want to do here is get the very edge of your pry tool, and you're going to run it along this edge right here where the green meets the black. Just insert it there, and you're going to lift ever so slightly. Now this portion right here is held down by plastic clips, so it shouldn't be too difficult to remove. You can already see there I have a little bit of separation from the back and the screen itself. So we're just gonna do that along the entirety of the phone so we could separate the back and be able to get access into the internals. You're going to want to be a bit cautious in this area right here where you have the rest of your buttons, because there is risk that you can potentially damage the connector that's behind it. So same thing, just the very edge of your pry tool, go in and slightly lift it so that way you can separate the back from the screen. And now that we have our back separated, we're going to lift it, not completely. You're going to want to hold it here at a right angle because as you can see here in this portion, there is a cable that runs from the inside of the back part right here and connects right there to the back of the phone. So for that, you can go ahead, if you have decent enough nails, you can go ahead and just remove that with your finger. If you don't, you can use a plastic prying tool. In these cases, you don't want to use metal with any of these connectors because you can potentially cause a spark. So if you don't have long fingernails or if you don't have a plastic prying tool, recommended that you don't use anything metallic. So you can just go in there, get underneath that connector, and it pops right out. We can then move this aside, and then we're going to be working on the rest of the phone on the inside. To start, we are going to lift up this plastic portion right here, and we're going to gain access to these connectors down below here. The most important one that we're going to begin with is the battery connector. We want to make sure that before removing any of the rest of the connectors, that this one is the first one that we unplug. So we're going to go ahead and with the very corner of our pry tool, go in there, separate it, lift up that cable just to make sure that it's not making contact anymore, and then we can go ahead and continue with the rest. Now, a couple of key points here. There are probably going to be a couple of different connections inside of the phone that you are going to have to be very careful about, and make sure that you do reconnect back when you are reassembling your phone with your brand new screen. So the remaining connectors that we have down here are these two right here. It looks like those are going to be the only ones besides the antennas that we are going to disconnect. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect those now. And you don't want to force these to come out just so you risk, or well, don't risk potentially damaging those cables. Now we're going to go ahead and with the other end of our plastic tool, we're going to lift up the connections for the antennas. This is going to be our Wi-Fi antenna here. And once those are disengaged, the final step that we're going to take is just to make sure that there's no screws that are holding down our board in place. That can potentially happen sometimes. You may have one or two screws holding it down just to be a little bit more secure. It does not look like we have any that are holding it down. So what we will begin to do is we're going to go ahead and get our metallic pry tool here. Now I said it's not important to get around the connections with these, so you can still potentially use this on the remaining portion of the phone. Just get a little bit underneath one of the sides here, and you're not going to put too much pressure because it's not going to be held down that much. So once we've lifted it, just making sure that there's no other connections that are on there, we are going to go ahead by removing this here. Now it is being held down by this little copper sticker here, so that's easily peelable. And once we have our motherboard removed, now we're going to go ahead and set that aside. And then we're going to work on the bottom portion right here near the charging port. We're going to start by removing the loudspeaker right here. Once that component's loose, just lift it up, set that aside. Next thing we're going to do is disconnect. Looks like 2 cables down here and our antenna. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remove our antenna from the side here first to make it a little bit easier to remove our port. And these just go located in a groove along the side of the screen. And next we're going to remove our charging port. So for this same thing, just find some place you can get into. You could potentially even use a pair of tweezers. Just get in underneath it. It should pop out pretty easy since it's not stuck down there. And we're gonna set our port aside now. And now the next step that we're gonna have to take is in removing the battery. Now this is going to be one of the most important parts and one of the most, I wouldn't like to say complicated, but you are gonna have a lot of patience in removing this, because for this, it is going to be recommended that you do not use any metallic pry tools as well. Same thing for the safety of the battery and making sure that you don't puncture it accidentally, because that can potentially cause a fire. Now we are going to remove this by setting it on our heating pad. The heating pad itself isn't very hot. It is just a normal controlled heat. And on top of that, we are also going to be using isopropyl alcohol to let the adhesive underneath come out a little bit more easier. Now, while the phone is heating up a little bit, I'd like to go ahead and take this opportunity to put a little bit of information out there. If you yourself have a repair like this that you're interested in doing either by yourself, we have plenty of videos here on the channel that you can go ahead and take a look at. We try to get as most models as we can out there. If there is a specific model that you would like to see, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Leave a suggestion on what model you'd like to see, and then we can go ahead and potentially make a video on that in the future. If you do not live in Arizona, because we do primarily work out of Arizona. If you do live in Arizona, we have about 4 stores here across the valley that you can go ahead and visit. Typically the repairs are same day, economically priced. So feel free to come on in if you guys are interested and do have a repair like this. For customers that do not live in Arizona, we do also offer a service in where you can ship in your device to us and we can go ahead, repair it, and then ship it back to you once it's ready. Information for that as well should be down below. If you do manage to send in your device, please go ahead and ship it to us with the proper information for us to be able to ship your information back. Any contact information also would be advised and would be helpful for us, so that way if in the case that there is anything that we do have to update you on, then we can go ahead and contact you as soon as possible. But yeah, repairs like this are fairly simple. As like I mentioned, it does take a little bit of patience, but as long as you do have a little bit of patience, you should be able to do this yourself. Or if you're not feeling up to it, feel free to send it in to us or reach out to any of your local repair companies that should be able to service it for you. All right, now, so it should be good to go. Now we're going to go ahead and get our isopropyl alcohol, and we're going to run a little bit across the gap that we have here. And we're going to run some along the bottom portion here. Now the alcohol mixed with the heat does help the adhesive loosen up a lot. Like I mentioned, you don't want to get any metallic prying tools. What I'll be using is a plastic playing card that I can go ahead and manipulate here to basically get underneath the battery. Now you don't want to pry up on the battery, like I mentioned. It's going to be something that I'm going to reiterate a lot, but you don't want to pry up on the battery to avoid puncturing it. I've gotten a good entrance in it now, so what I'm going to be doing is just running the card up and down. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to add in a little bit more isopropyl alcohol here. You can never use too little of it. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and add a little bit more alcohol onto the opposing side. Get back in underneath here. Gonna insert my guitar pick here so that side won't re-adhere onto the back of the screen. And here we go. I have the entrance point to the battery now. It feels like all the adhesive has now been removed properly, so I'm gonna go ahead and just see if I can lift this up. It's coming on out, and there we go. Battery's been removed. We're gonna go ahead and set that aside someplace safe. And then our final step before we can go ahead and reinsert our new screen is going to be removing a couple of the rest of the components. As you can see here, this is our new screen that we're going to be using. We are gonna have to swap over, it looks like, both the ear speaker, the power and volume buttons, as well as this cable right here, and it looks like the vibrator sensor down here. So it looks like we're only gonna have to pass over all those components from our old screen onto our new screen before we can go ahead and fully start to close it out. So for that, again, we're gonna go ahead and set our screen onto the heating mat so that way we can go ahead, and it shouldn't have to be too hot in order for us to be able to remove these components. All right, so once it's been properly heated up, we're going to begin with removing this flex right here. For that, we're just going to get a little bit of alcohol, put it there on the tip, and carefully lift up on it. Okay, set that aside. Next, we're going to remove our vibrator sensor down here. And for that, we're going to use a pair of tweezers so that way we can go ahead and lift up on this point right here. Just get underneath it, pry up on it a bit. The adhesive on that should give, and then on this end, just go ahead and lift up like that. We're going to set that aside as well. Next, we are going to remove our power and volume buttons, and same thing, just on a corner here. Go ahead and insert your tweezers and carefully pry up bit by bit. All right, once that adhesive has been disengaged, we're going to go ahead and remove our buttons off of the side here. Just so you guys can get a better look. I'm not prying up too hard on it. Once that's been disengaged, we're going to go ahead and set that aside as well. And then the final component here, and this, I believe this one should be the one that you had to take a little bit more time on, is the top speaker right here. You have to be very careful with these because if you do not remove them properly, you can damage it. And then you're not going to have any sound coming from your top speaker. You're only going to be having sound coming from down below. So feels a little bit cool. I'm going to go ahead and put this back on to the heating plate just so it can heat up a little bit more. Right, so it seems like it should be warm enough. Same thing with the pair of tweezers. Just go in on the very corner of the connector right here and lift up carefully. Once the adhesive on there is disengaged, we're going to follow up by removing the actual speaker itself. So you want to find a nice area where you can get a point of entry, and I'm going to go right here from this side of the speaker. I'm going to carefully lift up on it. And there we go, speaker's out. So gonna set the speaker aside, and now all we're gonna have to do is with our new screen, we're gonna follow all the steps in reverse, and we're gonna start by all those components that we just took off right now, we're going to be placing them back onto the phone in reverse order. So we're going to start by removing all of our films and covers that go over everything. This one is for the front camera. I'm going to leave the one for the battery on for now because it does have adhesive, but we're going to go ahead and place back our ear speaker. Now generally, sometimes if they are a bit dirty, I don't know how well it'll pick up. It's not too bad, but usually if it is kind of dirty, you do want to make sure that you get some kind of small brush, clean it up a little bit, because that does help the sound. I don't have a brush with me today. I am going to just be using this little cloth here, and I'm going to gently wipe off all the debris before placing it onto our new screen. I'm going to do our vibrator sensor next. We're going to set that in the groove where it sits in, and then we're going to just reposition this flex here. There we go. Next, I'm going to do our power and volume buttons, and there's these little pegs right here, if you can see them. There's 3 pegs. They should all line up with 3 holes here in the flex, so you know where it should sit. And then in here, we're just going to go ahead and set that in place. And then this flex cable, I am going to add on, I think, just for a little bit of extra support. I will be adding it on once the boards are in place. So the next step would be to put our boards back in. I'm going to start at the bottom here with our charging port. Just going to go ahead and slide that into position there. Press down on it a little bit. You should hear a little bit of a click as it engages with like the plastic clips that holds it down here. And then we will go ahead and connect our port. Just want to make sure that you line it up and it clicks into place. That'll be everything for that port. I think next I want to do my loudspeaker. So this one, same thing. Line it up, position it. It'll click right into place. Then I'm going to do our motherboard. So making sure that everything again is in place and there's nothing obstructing the board from sitting properly. Once you've cleared that, you're going to go ahead and you're going to want to start by positioning it from the top, and then the bottom should go in next. Getting all this plastic from our battery cover out of the way. You'll feel a little bit of a click when it sits into place as well. We're going to connect this connector here, and on the back of it you can see that there is adhesive. This cover is there just to protect the adhesive and from the actual connector itself from not, making contact and not sticking with anything else. So we're going to remove that cover here, and I'm going to set my phone down for this because I do want to make sure that it's properly aligned. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that clips into place first, and then ever so slightly, just making sure that that cable sits down. Give it a little bit of a rub so that way the adhesive sticks onto there, and we're good to go. We're going to remove this cover right here, and that is going to be for our smaller flex cable. I'm going to start by connecting it down below. Once you hear that click, you're just going to want to lay it down here in position where it sits. And connect that at the top. Make sure you hear that click. Before installing our battery, I am going to go ahead and put back our Wi-Fi antennas. So these run on a little groove like I mentioned earlier. There's just a little channel cut out here on the side. I'm going to start with our longer white antenna. And you'll notice here, I don't know, fun fact I guess you could say, hopefully it picks it up. You can see that on each of the connectors, if you don't know where it should be connected, they do have indicators on them. So on this connector right here, you can see a small letter W. That would indicate that that's where your white cable should be plugged into. And on this connector right here, on the very top right there, you can see that there's a letter B. That's where your black cable connects into. The same markings that are down here, you are going to have on your motherboard as well, and that should help you out a little bit easier, know which connection goes where. So we're going to get our antenna, and we're going to go ahead and position it down here. All right, that's now sat in place, and next we're going to do our black antenna. All right, so now the final step is going to be to install our battery. When installing this, we do want to make sure that we remove the covers for the adhesive. And now before setting our battery in, we do want to make sure that there is nothing down below here in this area that could potentially puncture it or that can obstruct it from it sitting properly. Same thing with the back of the battery. We just want to make sure that there's no glass shards. That can happen sometimes when the screens break or just any kind of other debris that it might pick up. So if it doesn't have anything, as long as it's clear to go, then you should be able to just install it. So we're going to go ahead and flip this aside just to make it a little bit easier on me. Going to position the battery, let it sit. Going to give it a little bit of pressure to make sure that it adheres to the back of the screen. And then we're going to go ahead and engage our battery by connecting it. Once it's connected, we can go ahead and we can get our back that we removed earlier. For this, just hold the back at a 90-degree angle. Go ahead and connect this flex in. It can be a bit finicky at times, so just be a little bit patient with it. All right, now that that's connected, we will go ahead and place our back. And to close this up, you just have to put a little bit of pressure on it. Since they are plastic clips, you'll hear them engage. So just put a little bit of pressure along all the edges, making sure that it sits nice and flush. Gonna give it a little bit of a once over, and now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and place our SIM tray back in. Once the SIM tray's in, last step before closing it up is going to be to put back all of our screws that we removed earlier. And like I mentioned, this helps out in the process of when you are putting it back together. If you do separate them by area or by size, it does help. You could also probably, if you want to make it a little bit more detailed, print out a little bit of a diagram and then set them that way. But as long as you remember which screws go where, you should be fine. These are all generally the same size, but if you didn't catch it earlier, you did notice that on the bottom portion here, all of these screws are black with the exception of this one right here. So that one, obviously, you know, should go down here at the bottom. You should separate that one out, especially if you know that that one should go in a specific spot. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what would happen if I don't put the screw in the spot that it's supposed to go in? The thing here is that if you were to not position it in the position that it's supposed to go in, you can run the risk of damaging the screen internally if it's too long. If the screw is long enough that it can basically go past the area that it's supposed to fit in, it can damage the screen internally. You might notice maybe like a splotch inside of it. And if it's left untreated, then it can damage the screen internally again without having to shatter the glass on the outside. And that's what could cause that glitching effect. All right, our bottom is all done. We're going to continue with the top portion here. All right, so now that we have all of our screws into place, before closing it up, we are going to run a test on the phone real quick just to make sure that it does turn on. And there you can see it is very faint, but it is coming on. All right, and now to close up the phone, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and cut out some double-sided adhesive tape so that way we can line it up around the entirety of the frame here for the phone, so that way we can go ahead and put our back cover back on and make sure the phone's nice and sealed. So for that, we do have this double-sided testa tape here that we're going to cut to fit, so that way it goes completely around the entirety of the phone. And then with your nail here, what I like to do is I like to make sure that the corners are rounded out a bit. So you can get your nail, run it across the corner there, so that way you make sure that it reaches all the way inside of the corner. And then to cut that out, just get a razor blade or X-Acto knife of your choosing. round that corner out, and once you do cut it to that fit right there, you'll see that it reaches completely all the way out to the corner, so that way there's no spots that we want to leave that don't have any kind of adhesive on it. And this will just help so that way it's more sealed properly. Side one is done. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to this side here. You will also want to make sure that before putting on your double-sided adhesive that you do clean up the frame, so that way you make sure, again, kind of the same rule of thumb as the battery, that there's no debris underneath there that can cause the back to not sit properly. You do want to especially do this with phones that do have a glass panel on the back, because if there is any kind of debris that's causing any pressure on there, it can potentially cause the back of the phone to break. Since this one's plastic, it's not going to damage the actual back itself, but it can potentially leave like a weird malformed bump. Alright, so now that I have my adhesive cut to fit around the entire frame of the phone, we're going to remove the back portion of it to reveal the other side of our double-sided adhesive tape, and that way we can go ahead and start putting on our back cover. Alright, so to remove our adhesive, we can use a pair of tweezers here, or you can use your fingernails, whichever you prefer. And then as an extra added bonus, to give a little bit more water resistancy to the phone overall, besides the double tape, we are going to go ahead and add some other adhesive as well. One of the other adhesives that we do also use here is a clear silicone, B7000. So we're going to run this along the edge as well, over the top of the double-sided tape. That helps, like I mentioned, with the overall water resistancy of the phone itself, and on top of that, it does make it easier for you to reposition the back if needed. If you don't align it right, then you can go ahead and remove it, and since the double-sided tape is still a little bit wet, you can go ahead and manipulate it. But yeah, overall, the reason that we do particularly use it along with the tape is for that reason, for the water resistancy. So we're going to get our phone here. And you don't need much of this. Honestly, a little goes a long way. Just gonna get a bead going all the way continuously across the whole back portion here on the tape. And now that we have the adhesive set up, we can go ahead and get our back here. Making sure to put a little bit of pressure on it so that way the adhesive does spread underneath. And as you can see here, the phone is good and ready to go. Brand new screen is installed. We'll go ahead and test it out. And last thing, finally, to go ahead and make sure that our back cover doesn't end up coming off in the process of drying, we are going to be getting these small C-clamps here. And we're going to go ahead and just place them along the edge so that way it holds down our back and it makes sure that it doesn't come up or come off at any point. With you setting these clamps on there and letting the phone to dry out for a bit, it should give it enough time for the adhesive to cure. It doesn't take too long for it to cure, but you do want to just make sure that it is making proper contact so that way you avoid it being lifted up at any point. Now when clamping it down, you don't want to put a lot of pressure on it because you don't need too much. Just a little bit of pressure, as long as it's able to hold down the cover, should be enough. All right, and there you have it. So we'll go ahead and just set this aside to charge, test it out properly, and that should be it. As soon as it dries up, we'll go ahead and contact our customers so that way they can come and pick up their phone. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, if you guys do have any questions, please feel free to leave it down in the comments below. Any suggestions on any kind of repairs you'd like us to do, then please as well, go ahead. We'd love your guys' feedback. That helps us provide and produce more videos for you guys that you guys want to see out there. If you did find this video helpful, please go ahead and do me a favor, drop a comment, drop a like, share the video. If you do have a repair and you do live in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, that you would like to get done, please feel free to come into any of our 4 stores and we'll gladly help you out. If you do not live in Arizona, but you do want to get your phone repaired by us, then please, like I mentioned, mail in your phone. All the information will be down below. Please send your phone in with all your contact information so that way we can contact you and let you know once your repair is done. Shipping information as well so we can ship it back to you. So hopefully you guys found this video great. Hope you guys have a nice day.